Thanks for coming back and welcome new friends to The In-Between. This is the podcast that talks and shares third or cross-cultural experiences.
Today, we're going to be talking about third culture kids in the United States. We'll be sharing about how we felt when we were living in the US. Hope you guys enjoy it.
All right, so we're back on the second episode.
Yeah, man.
How are you feeling?
I'm excited. I'm ready to talk about some more stuff here. Today, we're going to be focusing on the United States and how we spent our time, going back and forth and living in that culture, that country.
That's right. And as I recall, we live in the United States. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same place, but maybe around a decade, yeah?
Yeah, I think it's about that. If I recall, my adolescence, I think I had about, 10 years living there. And then I came back again for university.
Okay. Yeah, for me, I moved to the States when I was 15, and I moved out of the States when I was 25. So exactly 10 years.
It's a good chunk of our lives, though, you got to admit.
That's a long time.
We're not that old.
We're not that old. Yeah, I don't. Yeah. We're still in our 20s. Let's put it that way.
I wish.
Yeah. Yeah. So, since we're going to talk about our life or our living experience back in the States, how do you feel being a TCK in the United States?
Well, I was originally born in the United States, but I actually moved away when I was 3 years old. So I don't really count that as kind of any experience. Maybe some very brief memories. But my first real memory began when I came back to the United States, actually the state of Hawaii, when I was 9 years old and first kind of started going to elementary school. Yeah, that was my first taste of, culture in the United States. Granted, Hawaii might be a little bit different or quite a bit different than the mainland. And of course, the United States is a pretty large country. So depending on where you are, the culture will be vastly different. But again, more Western thinking. So I think it's safe to say.
Right.
I felt that it was challenging, to say the least. Yeah, I had a difficult time fitting in as individualism felt very foreign to me at that time.
Okay.
And although my parents probably thought Hawaii would be a place that was multicultural, and although it was still quite a challenge to kind of get used to the, let's just call it the style and the expectations of how I should be behaving with the other kids. Yeah. Okay.
But were they thinking about Hawaii being as a multicultural location already back then? Or they were just like, I don't know, were they just like, let's go to Hawaii and let's live in Hawaii kind of thing?
I actually should ask my parents what the main story was, but perhaps they wanted to be somewhere where we're still close to Japan or somewhere that I could perhaps still have some connections back to Japan in some ways. And
that makes sense.
Yeah, and if some of our listeners don't know, Hawaii has a good percentage of Japanese people. They might be, American-born Japanese, but still there's some cultural connection still there.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So you were living in Hawaii since 9 years old.
Right. But actually, I was only in Hawaii for 2.5 years before we went back to Japan.
Right. And then you lived in the mainland of the United States for quite a year too, right?
Right. I think it was right after 7th grade. We moved back to Indiana, where I was originally from. And after about a year of homeschooling, as my English level was quite low in terms of reading and writing, especially.
Oh, that's okay.
It was always one of my weak points. I finally entered high school there and then did my 4 years.
Interesting.
Luckily, and I count my blessings here, that I was able to get into an international school on a scholarship of some sort. And it was it was a better experience than I probably would have had compared to maybe public school.
Okay. Okay.
So a lot of people there who also had maybe similar backgrounds, mostly Europeans, I would say, European backgrounds. We were able to kind of get along, and I was able to kind of mingle pretty well with the folks there. I would say living in Indiana itself felt foreign to me, though. The overall culture of the
Oh.
state and everything was a little bit different than Hawaii and vastly different than Japan. But it was a good experience. I had a lot of interaction with my uncles and aunts and cousins, and also got to spend some time with my grandparents. So I think it was an overall positive experience. But after my time in high school, I decided I wanted to, leave Indiana and go back west towards Hawaii and be closer to Japan. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. But at that time when you were homeschooling, was your Japanese better than your English?
Funny you should ask. I still continue going to Japanese school on the weekends. So I would say probably yes at that point. And I would say by the end of university, my English level had surpassed my Japanese level.
That's pretty funny though, because I would consider your first language is Japanese. I don't
Yeah,
know.
it
I
was.
have been always thinking about that, since I met you, or since I knew your story, since I knew your story when we first met. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's safe to say. I don't know. It's really hard, even at this point, to really know what my most natural language is. I think I behave differently depending on the language I speak. I feel
Mm,
more comfortable if I'm speaking like daily conversation in Japanese.
right.
But if it's more
Right.
academic or more difficult vocabulary, then yes, English becomes my dominant language.
That reminds me, when I first, no, not the first time, but when I visited you in Japan, and we went to we took a cab from going from A to B, and then you were talking Japanese to the driver, and then the driver was saying that like you don't look like a person that's supposed to speak English, to speak Japanese, but apparently your Japanese is better than than the driver himself. I was like, I was sitting at the back. I was like, wow, that's crazy. Yeah, that's crazy.
If there's any Japanese speakers listening right now, there might be a common phrase you've probably heard many times when you speak Japanese, and that's "Nihongo jouzu desu ne," meaning like, "Oh, your Japanese is so good."
By the way, that was really Case speaking Japanese for your audience references. Yeah, that was really him. Yeah.
It's a
So
it's a funny phrase to me because they mean to be polite, and they're like, "Oh yeah, your Japanese is so good," but then sometimes they say it too quickly. I might say like, "Oh, thank you for the meal. It was delicious," and they're like, "Oh, your Japanese is so good." I'm like, "Come on, you gotta, you can't give it away that quickly."
that makes me recall that when I first met you back in college, and then after I knew your background story, but before I heard you talking in Japanese, and back then I learned Japanese for about 2 years. Just follow through my education. We had two years of a foreign language, right? So I took Japanese as my second language. And then, so I knew a basic Japanese language skill, but just a basic. I wasn't able to communicate with the Japanese person, but I was able to understand a little bit. And then I heard you speaking Japanese fluently to a Japanese person, like a Japanese person in our circle. And I was like, was there something wrong? Like what's going on with this white person? I mean, about Case. Yeah, I was like, it was really surprising, to be honest with you. Yeah, it was really surprising. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
and yeah, and so afterwards, I guess you were living in the United States as a TCK quite smoothly, you think?
I would say my time in Indiana was smoother than my time in Hawaii. I want to just add that I feel people like us who kind of go back and forth between different cultures, different countries, at each turn, we get a little bit better at conforming to that culture. If it's in, a collective culture like Japan, we kind of, make sure we don't overstep our boundaries too much. Whereas if we're in like a more of a Western situation, we might have to step up a little bit more to make ourselves heard and not appear as someone who's, unfriendly, for example. So I think we get a little bit better at being like a chameleon, so to speak, where we can kind of camouflage into different scenarios.
That's right.
Yeah. How about you, man? I'm sure you have lots of great stories to share as well with your time in Hawaii.
Well, I've been sharing some of them with the audience so far, but for your guys' reference, I moved to Hawaii when I was 15 for education, and before that, I was living in Taiwan pretty much all the time. And so I think living in United States as a TCK is actually pretty good. I would say it's pretty good. I think America is actually a good place to learn how to be a TCK, in my opinion, because there are many opportunities to meet, varieties of people from different countries.
Of course.
Yeah, and it was an eye-opening opportunity for me to live in the States. Back in about 30 years ago, and even longer. There was a culture in the community in Taiwan, in the community, that a lot of parents, they want to send their kids to the United States for education.
Okay,
I'm not too sure about in Japan, maybe, but it was like a trend.
Yeah, it was popular,
of sending
right?
people. Right, it was really popular. And back in the day, a lot of parents, or at least a lot of the elders, as long as their kids have a really good ability, not necessarily has to be only speaking, but overall in English skill in a really top level, or like at least like a native speakers, then they can actually earn more salaries later on in the workforce. Yeah, so they were pretty much they were looking on the bright side for their kids' futures.
Would you say there's almost like a status associated with that, or even an expectation that you would send your kid overseas to study?
Definitely. 110%. 110%. Yeah, because you need to have a basic, well, like back in the day, maybe extraordinary financial status to send.
I would imagine it wasn't a cheap thing and something not everyone could do.
And for your guys' references, like back in the day, well, we say a lot of back in the day because that was quite a bit from us. But actually, about 20 to 30 years ago, I think the tuition in Hawaii is actually way cheaper than the tuition in mainland. But just the living cost is higher than the mainland.
Sure. But the tuition cost is probably a little bit more friendly.
The more friendly. Yeah. So, as long as you can work, I mean, as an international student, you can't work legally, but we're not jumping into that. We're not jumping into that. But you can always work at school and, get your paycheck for either, for your meals or for your rent. It just depends on how long you work on campus. But there's always a way to make money in the States.
Fun side story. John and I used to work together for the school's newspaper.
That was a good time. Especially we had to work at night.
Right.
So we had to go around the campus like when nobody was there, and it was kind of spooky, right?
Right. We met up around 1 a.m., loaded up the van with newspapers, and started our delivery route.
Right. Yeah. We can jump into that later on. So I feel like living in the States as a TCK, so we got to know a lot of people from Hawaii or all over the world, especially you have other international students at school. And slowly, especially when I was in high school, I was pretty much raised by the local homestay family that they were really, really influenced my childhood. Yeah. And they were actually turning me into a TCK person.
I see. But I gotta ask though, when you first arrived in Hawaii, I mean, I have to imagine it must have been a bit of a shock, right? Since you were growing up in Taiwan all this time, was there not any kind of friction between you and the homestay family or your classmates?
I would say I had a smooth transition in between being Taiwan boy and into a TCK person.
Hmm.
Right. The before I moved to Hawaii by myself. By the way, I moved to Hawaii by myself without my parents. Like I said, there was expectation from the parents that they want to send their kids to the United States for education back then. And my parents asked me casually, how would I feel to going study abroad? And then I wasn't shocked. I was pretty much going along with their conversations. And I was like, sure, why not?
Hmm.
I, I accepted, I mean, there was a privilege, I would say, and I still appreciate them till this day to give me this privilege. But I was going along with with their expectation. I was going along with their conversation of asking me whether I'm okay or not, because I'm sure that they were probably expecting me saying no because I don't, not didn't want to leave Taiwan and such, but I did not react in that way. So I guess there was a relief for them too. There was a relief for them too. So when I got to Hawaii on January 1st, I think it was 2003. It was January 1st. I always remember that. I always remember that day in my life. Um, when I got off the plane, I did not feel I did not feel anxious at all. Although back in the day, my English speaking skill was, close to zero.
It's really hard for me to imagine that you couldn't speak English.
That was okay. So I received my English education in in my junior high. So that
Okay.
was from 12 to 14. My junior high it was basically there was English class, but it was pretty much just hi, how are you? I'm fine, thank you, kind of thing.
Right. The typical content.
A
Yeah.
very a typical Asian English material. Right. So so that's all I had, and I knew I had to speak with my hands around.
A
If
lot
people
of
know,
gestures.
if if you know, then you know what I'm talking about. So I knew I had to do that, but I feel like I did not have time to be to be hesitated
Hmm.
about it because I have to communicate. And of course, there is a flip side on being a TCK in the United States, but I did not feel any flip side yet at the time. And I always appreciate I had a chance to play for the school team for a few sports
I
because
see.
that also gave me no time to be homesick, to be anxious, because I have to force myself to communicate with my teammates.
I see. It sounds like you had a really strong sense of intrinsic motivation to really push you to get out there, mingle, learn English as quickly as possible so you could start really, carving out a space for yourself.
Definitely. And sports really did me good
Mm,
back then. Yeah.
that's
Because I
great.
haven't when you are so tired from training and from practicing, all you want to do is go back home is maybe talk about what the day has been through with your homestay family and then sleep.
Plus, I mean, I'm assuming during sports, yeah, you do communicate, but a lot of it is like body language as well. So it's almost a different form of communication.
Well, it depends on the sports. I used to play tennis.
Okay, yeah.
And tennis was okay, but when you play double, then you have to really communicate. Which turn is this when the ball comes, and if you want, or how when we're gonna switch position and stuff. But when you talk about in basketball, when you communicate in basketball, that's another story because during the game, you can call out the position for sure, but that's just maybe one or two words. But when there's a timeout, when coaches or when the coaches speak or when you need to communicate with teammates, that got to be a sentence in sentences.
Of course.
I have to squeeze out all the words I knew and to form a sentence to talk to my teammates, especially there was only a few Asian international students on the team, but not a lot. Mainly just like local kids or kids from mainland. So that was really like English training all day long.
Could you understand the coach's directions when he told you, John, I expect you to run down the court and get into position?
I had a really good first coach when I got into high school. So I think he or his kid had international experience back then. So when he talked to me individually, he talks pretty slow and with a slightly easier words. But when he couldn't do that, that gave me the practicing time to get used to um, a normal speaking style of English.
I see.
So that was I would say sports did me good on adopting the local culture, adopting the United States culture.
It sounds
US
between
culture.
sports, your coach, your friends, and especially your homestay family, they really helped you to adjust.
Right. Right. And for my homestay family, I'm not too sure if a lot of the audience get to like they have a homestay family. They know about what homestay family is that an international student moved to a place for education. The school will find any family that is close to the school and asking them if they want to have that students living with them for a certain amount of time. That's what we called homestay family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just for you guys' reference. So I had two homestay families throughout my high school time. The first one, which influenced me a lot and taken a very good care of me, that the father is American-born Egyptian.
Really? Okay. Ooh.
Yeah, and when I was 15, he was like only 25 or 26.
Oh wow,
So
he was young.
He was young, and then he was a school teacher. He was a teacher at my school, and he was Egyptian. His parents were like the first generation Egyptian moving to the States.
Wow.
Yeah, and the funny thing, well, I'm not saying I shouldn't say it's funny. It's very interesting thing because as we mentioned, there were a lot of Japanese people in Japan, right? No, sorry, not in Japan, in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
So he married a Japanese woman from Japan.
Oh wow! Did you ever
Not a
ask?
second generation in Hawaii, but the first generation. Right. So I live in that homestay family with Egyptian culture, American culture, and Japanese culture.
That's quite an experience, man.
That was awesome. That was awesome. I mean, the Egyptian culture wasn't really in the house. But when we're eating dinner or visiting his parents, we're eating like quite a bit of Egyptian food sometimes.
Yeah, I imagine the cuisine in that house was amazing. From Egyptian food to Japanese food to American food, you could taste so many different flavors.
I know, and it was like, is this supposed to be like in every homestay family or something like that? And later on, I learned that it wasn't because that's supposed to be like all Hawaiian or all American. But especially when I heard the grandparents were talking, which is the father's parents, they would be like speaking in Egyptian
Oh,
to each other,
okay, yeah, of course.
but mixing with some English words. So they'll be like blah 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 blah, be able to blah 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 blah, or blah 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 blah, something like that, blah 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 blah. So I'd be like, it's really surprising how this works. So yeah, it was really interesting.
I wonder what you would call that.
It was fascinating.
I know if you do that in Japanese, it's called Japanglish. But if it's an Egyptian, what would that be called?
Gypkalish?
Oh my gosh.
That's so bad. That's so bad. Oh my god.
Hopefully,
Oh
maybe
my
one of
God.
our listeners knows the answer.
Yeah. If you know the answer, like let us know. Let us know. Like later on when we have our social media account something, or let us know. Yeah.
Please comment.
But I think so back to the topic, I think on the other hand, there's always a flip side. There were always people that who did not know much about others from, different culture and background. I'm sure you had that back in Japan too. And so, but not to mention from different countries, especially Asia. There's always discrimination in the States and other countries too, which we will be talking about it a little bit. However, like I said, there is no majority in Hawaii, so discrimination is not as bad as other places in the
Hmm.
States.
All right, man. Well, let's change gears a little bit. And I want to kind of ask you, how do you compare what maybe a third culture kid might have been back then, like when you were young, when you were experiencing it, to what a third culture kid might be going through right now in 2025? What do you pick up from the news? What do you hear from other people you know? Like, what's your perspective on it?
Well, that's a big question. I think that technology really helps the present TCK to understand what other cultures are like from
Hmm.
other countries, especially on their phone, because there's so much you can get all kinds of information on your from your phone right now.
Hmm.
And it's really quick and straightforward way to get to know each others. But I think what we had back then was a chance to interact with other people, whether it's with a local or other TCKs in person, through conversations, through sports, or even visiting their houses, or even for in my cases, other homestaying families. So I think it's going around with a different method now, and it's really easy to get to know other TCK online these days. But I still like the way how we had back then, because you can talk to the actual person like what we did before. I think it's really easy to talk to someone on the phone, but I don't think it's making, but well, I don't think it's apparently easier. And I'm more, call me old fashioned, but I still think making a sincere communication interaction is much more valuable, because talking to someone via app is way too easy. I
Yeah.
think it's just way too easy. People don't appreciate how treasure or how precious interacting with the actual person is.
I might be giving
Yeah,
away my age here, but MSN Messenger wasn't a thing until I was in high school. So
right. Yeah, I
anytime
remember
before
that.
that, yeah, you were forced to pick up the phone and talk to them verbally if you wanted to like call up your friend in the evening or something.
Yeah, I know. I still remember you have to log on and log out, and when you see someone you want to talk to, just log in and you just like you know right away talking to that person. But right now you just need to text the person and just wait for the reply. You know.
Right, right. And a lot of information is left out when you don't use your voice, the tone, the pauses, right? When it's just
You don't know
text.
the attitude of the person
Exactly.
when
Yeah.
they reply. Yeah. But if you really want to compare, to back to your question, if we really want to compare the TCK now and then, I would say the TCK right now has more chance to embrace more culture and internalize to themselves. If they
Uh
really like if they really like a Japanese culture, especially from manga or something, then they can adopt it. They were saying they were influenced by Japanese manga a lot, even though they were living in the States, where they're living in Taiwan, you know. If they never lived in Japan before, but they can still be influenced by the Japanese manga culture.
oh, absolutely. Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. But back then when we did not have a lot of anime to watch. We had a few, but not as many as what we have right now on stream, on Netflix, on Disney Plus, whatever.
It wasn't as
So
accessible. Yes.
it was more of an entertainment. It wasn't it wasn't influential factor of our background, I
Hmm.
would say. And right now, it's way easier. than before. So I would say that's the difference between now and then. Between now and then. Yeah.
Mhm.
What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you when you say that technology has really changed how a third culture kid can behave or interact within
Mm-hmm.
a society.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely changed the playing field. If I focus just on maybe, prospect of being a TCK in American society and kind of compare what it used to look like and now, the pros and cons, I would say to me, a lot of it's influenced by the news and media, maybe even the current government administration of a country
Mm-hmm.
and how different stereotypes are portrayed, right? And that might add bias to how you look at a different culture, which is not great because, you might meet someone from the culture in person and be like, this person's an absolute delight. I can't believe how their culture was portrayed in the news. And I think a lot of that has an influence on how people might preconceive how someone is. And it goes back to that old saying, right? You don't want to judge a book by its cover.
Of course.
And now because of social media, as you added earlier, it's much more easy to create bubbles and to kind of add more influence to people. Whereas in the old days, yeah, you could watch news on the TV, pick up the newspaper or a magazine, but I think interactions were more authentic back then. So that might be a difference now. But on the plus side, it's easier to connect with people and stay connected. And people are also exposed to different cultures through reels and videos and stories through social media. So you can learn about different cultures much more easily. And so maybe if you're active enough, you can learn for yourself that, oh, no, what the news is saying is totally wrong. These people are awesome. Their culture is great, and I feel like people are more willing and adventurous to travel to new places to experience it for themselves. So I'd say,
of course,
maybe it balances itself out in some ways. So I can see pros and cons from back then and now. And I just hope that we still keep moving in a positive direction, that globalization keeps happening and people are more appreciative of other cultures, learn from them, the language, the story.
That is actually also one of the purposes of this channel. We want to, share more stories with our audiences, let them know what they might not know, or remind them of what they actually already knew.
Absolutely.
That's right. Yeah. But in my opinion, despite all the political issues aside, I hope one day that TCK is not a thing, because we all have a TCK in us. So we are used to, as a human being, there are so many things that we still have to learn from this world, from other countries as well. But because TCK is so easy to be a TCK right now with the help of technology. So I hope one day there's no TCK because everybody is a TCK. So we can understand each other. Right. And that's what I hope. Yeah. So, and then people get more and more interesting stories.
Yeah. And that's something we hope to do, is to share lots of those stories through these episodes.
That's right. And further down the road, we're going to share more stories with you guys. Hopefully you guys can share your stories with us. We're going to have more and more episodes coming out, and I hope you guys will enjoy it and just keep following us. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for listening to this episode. We'll see you next time.
Shoot.